Hello and welcome to another short drawing film. This week I'm going to show you how I created this image for a YouTube channel called In the Ludes. I used the Adobe Fresco app and it's mostly vector based, but I did use a few bitmap layers to make those vector layers a bit more interesting. So I'll show you that process now. So if we go over to Fresco, the first thing I did was a very rough sketch, a little more than a thumbnail really, something to show the client and just say, are you basically happy with the direction this is going in? Do you want to make any big changes? If so, let me know now and I'll plot them in, because it's much easier to do it at this stage than it is later on when it's all cleaned up and coloured. There wasn't any massive changes here, so I plugged on, and the next thing I did was to clean all the line work up. So I used my favourite chisel tipped vector brush and cleaned all the lines up with a nice black outline. You see that because it's vector, however close you go, it stays really smooth, which is what you want. And you'll notice that I'm working straight on top of the original thumbnail, which I quite like. Some people like to do a very precise rough sketch and then work perfectly over the top of it to clean things up, whereas I prefer to have a very rough sketch, because then as I'm cleaning things up, my brain has got something to do. I can sort of wonder about making changes. I can tweak things, move things about, like the windscreens there have been shuffled a little bit and I've added things to the background that weren't in the rough bit. So I find that more interesting to do that way. Once that was done, I could hide the original sketch and start colouring things in. So again, I did that all with vector brushes to keep that clean, crisp, scalable effect. So here's the whole set of layers. I used a different layer for each fill. If I switch these on for the now, and we'll go inside. So this is how it looks when every item has been filled with a flat colour with a vector brush. Which looks all right. I was quite happy with that colour scheme. I quite like those sort of muted lilacs and greys and blues. The only thing is, I did think you could make it a bit more interesting, and you could do that with adding some subtle shifts in colours on some of these things. Instead of being one colour and like all of this door being one flat colour, if it had a subtle shift of colours, that would be more interesting to look at. But unfortunately, Fresco doesn't allow you to fill a vector shape with a gradient yet. It might do one day, but if you were in Illustrator or Affinity, you'd be able to do that. You could use a gradient as a fill. But there is a way around that. You can still get the same effect, almost, by adding a clipping mask. So I'll show you what I did there and then explain what they are. So here I've got a layer that's hidden. When I reveal it, this layer is for the background, and it allows me to sort of subtly change the background colours, going through a yellow to an orange to a mauve, like a nice pool of light, I suppose, and it kind of focuses you on the centre a bit more. And that's rather pleasing. I think it's much more interesting than a flat colour. Kind of comes to life when that switches on. And I did the same for the car as well, which also goes through this kind of warm pinkish colour at the top and a deeper blue at the bottom. And it helps with the modelling of the shapes slightly as well. I did that all just with a soft brush, like an airbrush tool, a bitmap tool, and just sprayed the colours I wanted gently over the top. And because that's on top of a vector shape, all the line work and everything is still scalable and super smooth. It's just those gradients that are bitmaps, but they're so subtle that you don't really see the blocks. So if you're still confused as to how a clipping mask works, I'll just nip over here and show you on this demonstration. So here we've got two vector brush shapes, just a couple of squares, and on a separate layer, on a layer above, we're going to make a new layer there, and we're going to click this middle icon here at the side, like a box with a downward arrow, and that tells you that it's going to be a clipping mask. So in there, I can pick myself a brush, a bitmap brush. So here I've got a chalk, and let's pick some nice colours, and I don't know, let's make it stripy. So I'm going to make these boxes have a nice chalk stripe on them using this chalk brush. You can see it only draws where there's a shape underneath. I can pick another colour and a slightly smaller brush There we are. And you can see if I hide this layer with the eye there, it hasn't affected the original stuff underneath. It's sitting on top and it's masked to the shape underneath. So it's what's it called? A non-destructive edit. So which is really good, because quite often you want to try something out and it's not quite right. And it's a bit of a pain if you've unless you're undoing, it's it's really awkward to get back to where you were before you put that stuff on, if it's all blended into your original shape. And you can even add another one and make that a vector shape, make that a clipping mask. Just pick a different thing. Let's have some halftone things. Here we are, nice big halftone brush, some dots. How does that look on top? Some over there as well. And again, those can be switched on and off. You can try it without the stripes, just have those. If I stop these layers being clipping masks by clicking on the icon again, you can see where I actually drew beyond the boundaries of the shapes. But because it's a clipping mask, it's this needs to be moved down there. It's constrained to where the shape was underneath. Let's switch that one back on, make it a clipping mask again. So you can rearrange these. So you can see that's a really nice way to alter the appearance of your vector shapes. And although when you go really closely they are a bit blocky, especially if it's a very contrasty colour there, the outside edges of your vector shapes are still super smooth and lovely. So generally, if you're working at a decent resolution, you'll get away with it and it will look fine. There's just one slightly annoying thing, which is if you want to edit your image further in a desktop app like Affinity, if you want to export from Fresco and preserve your vector files that are editable shapes, then you need to use a file format like a PDF. And PDFs don't support the clipping masks. So any layers that have a clipping mask end up becoming bitmaps, sort of pixel layers, which has the little pixelated edges, which we don't want. So the simple way around that is to disable any layers that have a clipping mask and export the file then as a PDF. And then when you open that in Affinity, you just have to reassign your clipping masks to the correct layers, and then everything should be just as it was before. So that's pretty much it. I hope it wasn't too waffly, and I hope it wasn't confusing. It's a really useful thing to get your head around and to know about, because it's a feature that appears in most apps like Photoshop and Procreate. They all can do clipping masks, but they can't necessarily mix them with vector layers, which is quite unusual. So like and subscribe if you found that interesting and want to see more of this sort of thing. And otherwise, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you for another film soon.